Here's a sound test for you, Jeff. Test, test, 1, 2, 3, 4.
This is going to be fun.
Is it on when it's, is that on? That looks like it'd be lights on, but it's wrong color. Check.
Put it on. So you can hear everything. See what's coming across. Okay. I just can't talk during this meeting. Copy that.
Andy, do we have audio with you?
Check 1, 2, 3. You hear us, Governor?
All right, we're just waiting to see if we hear from the Attorney General. Have you
Sounds
seen
good.
him or heard from him there? No?
No one down here has.
Okay. So, no, well, so we'd have to have 3 with 4, right? Yeah, we couldn't do it. Okay, we'll do that. All right. It looks like the Attorney General is not going to be here, Andy, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'll call to order the Executive Branch Audit Committee meeting for July 19th of 2023 at 9 a.m. Can I have the clerk call the roll, please?
Lieutenant Governor Anthony will not be attending. Secretary of State Aguilar.
Here.
Treasurer Kodak.
Here.
Controller Matthews.
Here.
The Attorney General will not be available today. And Chair Governor Lombardo.
Here.
We have a quorum, Governor.
All right, well, we'll close agenda item number 1, move to number 2, public comment. And since this is a new law, we'll read the entire statement. No action may be taken upon a matter raised under public comment period unless the matter itself has been specifically included on the agenda as an action item. The chair of the Executive Branch Audit Committee will impose a time limit of 3 minutes. Public comment may be provided in person or via telephone. Do we have any public comment to the south there, Mr. Matthews?
No, Governor, we don't.
Do we have any here? Any public comment? Carson City, any on the phone? No, sir? All right. We will close the public comment and move to agenda item number 3, approval of the December 14th, 2022 minutes. And move for an action. Motion.
I will move to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Should we better define that?
I will move to approve the minutes of the December 14th, 2022 meeting, which I was here for and can attest that they were correctly done.
Based on the advice of council, I will second that motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Are we good, Dan? Okay. We will close agenda item number 3 and move to agenda item number 4, presentation of audit reports pursuant to NRS 353A.085. This is an information-only item. Warren, we'll move forward.
Thank you, Governor. Please.
Good morning, Governor and members of the committee. For the record, Ruby Camposano, Executive Branch Auditor, representing the division.
I'm sorry, I missed your name.
Ruby Camposano,
Ruby.
sir. Yes,
Welcome.
thank you. Representing the Division of Water Resources is Adam Sullivan, State Engineer, and representing the Department of Taxation is Jeff Mitchell, Deputy Director. This is our second audit for the division. The division has requested this audit to review the procedures related to water assessment and indirect cost allocation. There are 2 types of water basins in Nevada: agricultural and municipal water basins. Agricultural water basins are basins that are predominantly, that is at least 50% of the users, used for agricultural purposes. Municipal basins serve the non-agricultural users. Basin management costs of the agricultural basins are paid by the water rights holder, based on the proportion of water rights owned to the total water rights issued within that basin. This audit focused on the water assessment and cost allocation equitability for municipal water basins. We made 2 recommendations. First, we recommend the division reinstate the former water assessment methodology for municipal water basins. The former water assessment methodology for municipal basins was based on assessed property value. A large residence or commercial building with higher property value would pay a larger assessment than a small residence. A significant difference exists in water consumption between residential and commercial users. The current methodology charges both residential and commercial users the same flat fee. Residential property owners effectively subsidize the basin water management cost of commercial and industrial property owners that generally use more water. Reinstating the former water assessment methodology that is based on assessed property value will enhance assessment equitability for municipal water users. Second, we recommend the division develop an equitable basin cost allocation methodology that is consistent with accounting best practices. The division currently uses the cash balances of the basin budget accounts as the basis for indirect cost allocation. This methodology is an arbitrary approach that charges expenses to the basin budget accounts with higher cash balances without consideration to the actual basin management costs incurred. This methodology is not consistent with accounting best practices and has resulted in inequitable indirect cost allocation and subsequently inaccurate billing to water users. Cash balances do not provide an accurate reflection of the costs and expenses associated with basin management. Accounting best practices require costs to be matched to funding sources. Allocating indirect costs based on the basin budget account's percentage of indirect expenses to total expenses will accurately assign the division's indirect costs to the basin budget accounts that receive the benefit. The direct expenses recorded in the respective basin budget accounts directly associate with the operation of that basin and will provide an accurate measure of the resources used. An accurate cost allocation will provide the division with precise data and insight into basin financial activities and allow leadership to make better informed basin management decisions. We would like to thank the management and staff of the NDWR and Department of Taxation for their time and input throughout the audit. We will be happy to answer any questions the committee may have at this time.
Thank you, Ruby. Do we have any questions of any board members?
Yeah, what is the impact of this change on a traditional farmer in the Fallon area? Is there any impact? Because I assume they use the agricultural basin, not the municipal.
As we had said, Secretary, this audit was focused on the municipal
Okay.
water basins,
Thank you.
not the agricultural, so
Thank you.
there is no impact.
Okay.
Mr. Matthews, any questions?
Not at this time, Governor. Thanks.
All right, thank you. That will close agenda item number 4, and we'll move on to agenda item number 5, presentation of audit 6-month follow-up status reports pursuant to NRS 353A.090, informational only. We will start with 5A.
Good morning, Governor and committee members. For the record, my name is Patty Antonucci, Executive Branch Auditor. This is the 6-month follow-up to our Commission on Peace Officers Standards and Training Audit, DIA Report 2301. The audit focused on significantly declining court assessment fee revenue, which inhibited their ability to train. Recommendation 3 is fully implemented. Developing policies and procedures for audit follow-ups and reporting audit results to post leadership. Post updated its administrative manual to include Internal weekly audit updates and audit results are reported at the post-commission meetings. Recommendation 1 is partially implemented. We recommended Post assess additional funding options for public protection training. Post received legislative approval to be fully funded by the State General Fund during the 2023 legislative session. However, the Emergency Vehicle Operators Course remains unfunded. Post requested ARPA funds unsuccessfully, but continues to pursue funding through the Capital Improvement Plan. Recommendation 2 is also partially implemented. We recommended Post report meaningful public safety performance measures and outcomes. Post is updating their performance measures and will implement this recommendation in the next biennium with their agency budget request. Director Michael Sherlock and Deputy Director Chris Carter are available to answer any questions the committee may have.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions of any board members?
No questions.
What was the capital cost of that additional center? What's the actual number?
Mike Sherlock for the record. So this CIP request is, basically we had to start over. It was approved back in 2007, nearly fully funded at that time, but with the economic downturn, those funds were swept and we started over. So much time has passed that our current request at CIP by their recommendation, or Public Works recommendation, is to fund the plans and that sort of thing. And I 360,000, I think, is what the request is right now.
Scope if you could, the whole thing. Is this a $5 million piece of business, a $500 million piece of business?
We're, again, about 14 million now. Been very frustrating from that perspective, but yeah.
Thank you.
Governor
Follow-up question, Governor.
Go ahead.
In terms of pursuing the CIP approach, time frame wise, is it anticipated that would be something that would occur in the 25 session, or what would be the timetable on that?
I'm Mike Sherlock for the record. I'm sorry, I didn't quite, to complete the project?
To pursue the funds via the CIP route, just in terms of the time frame that you anticipate that playing out during, or pursue, would that be during the 25 session, or?
Yeah, again, Mike Sherlock for the record. So again, it would be on CIP's Public Works timeline, and again, right now, okay. So April 1st, for that portion that we have placed a request at the CIP.
All right, thank you.
So I have a question, Governor Lombardo, for the record. So Mike, I understand through Patty's presentation that the emergency vehicle operations was not funded. So how are we accommodating that in the intern?
So for us, our own academy, we are utilizing the training center in Reno, which has been sort of a burden for us coming from moving all our recruits or cadets up to Reno and that kind of thing. Prior to that, we were using a parking lot here in Carson City, which is just not the best, most conducive, for training. The other issue with going to the training center in Reno is there's a new cost for us. We have to rent that, and then we're at the mercy of their schedule and trying to schedule our people with all their needs being considered.
When you say Reno, you're referring to Washoe?
Yeah, it's the Joint Training Center in Washoe County. Yeah.
Okay, and then what are we doing to the south?
For Metro, for instance, I believe uses the racetrack. Henderson has a facility that they're currently using. They may use the same thing. So in the south, I believe they're working on a joint EVOC location right now, in fact. But there's a lot more opportunity in the south for locations that could be used for that type of training.
Right.
So it depends on the academy down there. Nye County has an academy. Henderson, Metro, are using different locations, but right now they're doing okay.
So I guess the question is, if you're able to accommodate by the use of the Northern Nevada Training Center, why would you continue to pursue this?
We're very limited on when we can schedule the training center in Reno. Our issue is for us to be able to provide that training for the rurals, for the smaller agencies across the entire state is extremely limited. The priority for the Northern Nevada Training Center is the consortium, which is Washoe County, UNRPD, I believe, Reno PD, Sparks PD. Outside of that, we're secondary in terms of scheduling and our ability to use that facility and cars and all that type of thing. So we still believe there's an extreme need for our rural agencies to be able to attend that type training, even if it's maintenance training. We're unable to do that. Right now, we do the academy, and that's it, because we just don't have the facilities to do continuing education and driving.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions?
I do, Governor. Cisco for the record.
Go ahead.
So if the South has capacity, is there a reason why, I know it's hot down there, but is there a reason why the South isn't utilized for this training? Especially if they're coming from all over the state.
Yeah, Mike Sherlock for the record. So there's a lot that goes into emergency vehicle operation training, obviously. One of the big things is cars. And it is a mandated subject within basic training. And so Metro runs about 60 people through their academy at a time. We're running 30, 35 people at a time. Moving that many people to the south for a 40-hour course would be difficult and cost prohibitive for post for sure. And so there's no way we could move the north people down to the south during a basic training program to attend that type of training. It has to be, regional in scope.
Thank you.
Mr. Matthews, any further questions?
Good here.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sherlock. We will close agenda item number 5A and move on to 5B.
Good morning, Governor. Ruby Camposano again, Executive Branch Auditor, for the record. This is a 6-month follow-up to our first audit of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, Division of Water Resources Audit, DA Report number 2302. The audit focused on reducing the division's reliance on state general funds by pursuing self-sustaining funding options. We made 2 recommendations, and both recommendations have been partially implemented. First, we recommended for the division to seek legal analysis of statute to determine allowable charges to water users. Statute allows the division to charge water users for necessary water management costs. However, the statute is unclear as to what specific expenses may be charged to the water users. The division does not currently charge all indirect costs to the water users. Instead, it relies on the state general funds to pay for these expenses. The division made a formal request for analysis to the Attorney General's office, and the Attorney General's office is currently analyzing this request. Second, we recommended for the division to seek BDRs to update the fee schedules. The division received the recommendation after the BDR submission deadline for the 2023 legislative session. The division reports it will pursue the BDR during the next legislative session. Adam Sullivan, State Engineer, is available to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of any board members? Mr. Matthews?
Nope.
Cisco? I have a question. So the Attorney General gave it sounded like a vague answer to the when they're gonna evaluate. Can we get a more definitive answer? I don't know if you're able to do that.
Governor Warren, for the record, we will reach out to their office and get a better timeline for you.
So I guess the gist of the audit, we haven't accomplished any items in the 6-month report?
That's correct, Governor. That's why they're listed as partially implemented.
Right.
They're working on them, but they have not fully implemented them.
Right, I believe it's unfair to conduct a comprehensive audit if you can't even get a date on when we're gonna participate, so. Can we provide that?
We will work to get that date
All
for
right.
you, Governor.
Any other questions? Hearing seen none, we will close agenda item 5B. Move on to agenda item number 6, presentation of annual follow-up reports. It's informational only. We move to 6A.
Good morning, Governor and members of the committee. Craig Stevenson, Audit Manager for the record. This is the first annual follow-up to our Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, Division of Forestry Audit, DIA Report Number 2106. The audit focused on overtime monitoring. I'm pleased to report that Recommendation 1 has been fully implemented and the division continues to successfully monitor overtime. Earned overtime is tracked bi-weekly and reports are sent to DCNR leadership for monitoring. The second recommendation, to coordinate with NDOC to reestablish the inmate workforce, is partially implemented. The division conducts bi-weekly meetings with NDOC leadership to organize efforts to increase inmates available for the workforce. The average population of inmate workers remains steady at approximately 350 statewide. Legislation passed in 2019 dramatically reduced the number of inmates available to staff conservation camps. AB 236 reduced sentencing and decreased the number of minimum security qualified inmates in the workforce and made many inmates eligible for early release. The division is working with NDOC to create a long-term plan to reestablish the inmate workforce. Casey, State Forester Fire Warden, is available to answer any questions the committee may have.
All right, do we have any questions, any board members? Mr. Matthews?
No, thanks, Governor.
Let's go. No questions. Zach? Man, that was easy for you. Thank you for your participation. We will close agenda item number 6A and move on to 6B. JJ, it's good to see you're all dressed up. Yeah.
Good morning, Governor and committee members. Beatrice Min-Ortiz, Audit Manager for the record. This is the first annual follow-up to our Department of Agriculture Grants Management 1 audit, DIA Report Number 2107. The audit focused on improving oversight of grants management and accounting practices to help ensure more efficient and timely use of federal grant funding opportunities, which impacts the future dollars for the state. Representing NDA is Director Goikichia. One recommendation remains outstanding. NDA has partially implemented the recommendation to improve grants management and fiscal processes. As we noted in the 6-month follow-up, full implementation will require completion of outstanding corrective actions and evidence of formal written policies, procedures, and internal controls for grant management and fiscal processes. NDA has taken action to improve grants management and fiscal processes, including updating record keeping to a paperless system, redefining the roles of program and fiscal staff, and setting up an internal tracking system so federal reimbursements are timely and expenditures are completed within the 90-day deadline. We thank NDA for their assistance in preparing our report. Director Goikichia is available to answer any questions the committee may have.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions?
Treasurer Conine, for the record, thanks for the work on this. Obviously, this audit brought up a lot of problems with the grant process that are statewide, right, that we run into everywhere. It seems like the last outstanding step, or one of the last outstanding steps, is simply committing everything that you're already doing to writing. So I'm curious from a timeline perspective when we think that'll be done.
Amara Vigil for the record. We are working on writing these policies and procedures. We have policies in place, but the procedures are what we're working on now. We're hoping within the next year, probably by the next end of this fiscal year, 24, that we should have those outlined and put in place. There are some changes that we'd like to make with some software that we'd like to put into place, grant management software, which will change those procedures as we go through them. So that's why they're not sooner rather than later.
I appreciate that. And Governor, a follow-up if I could.
Sure.
One of the suggestions I'd have is, as we're looking at grant management software, obviously grant management software is part of the larger ERP conversation, and there's also grants management software being looked at by a number of other agencies. I think as much collaboration as we can possibly get, especially through the governor's grants office, will save us, I think, a lot of pain in the future. I see some smiles from the audience. I appreciate that and appreciate the collaboration. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Any further questions?
Yes, Governor, and I think it's more just educational for me. On policies and procedures that are related to these types of issues, are you having to start from scratch, or are there other documents you can copy and paste from other agencies, or is every agency different?
Each agency, I think, is a little bit different on how we manage all of the fiscal area from what I've seen. We have reached out to the grant management office for the state to get some of their policies and procedures and have been looking at those to incorporate into ours. But we are starting, I wouldn't say from scratch, but we are putting kind of a tweak on them for ourselves.
Got it. Thank you.
I think I could just add, Director Goyetchia, for the record, we're aware of what doesn't work, and so we are changing those.
Okay. And I assume this is a regular occurrence of policy and procedures. And I assume, I just look at our own agency and understand that we don't have somebody who is an expert in that type of work. And to put this additional burden on staff, is there a way we can look at the audit, the internal audit affairs, to have somebody whose specialty is to draft policies and procedures?
I don't want to, Warren, obviously, Director Lim, you can speak for yourself. I expect audit's going to tell you they don't have enough people because they don't have enough people, which is a general state issue. I do think that there's something that we could all do to try and unify some of this policy and procedure work, because a lot of it, to your point, is the same agency by agency. But even if you just look at grants management, if there are 10 agencies that get federal grants, there are 14 policies about how we should get federal grants.
Yeah, Governor, if I may add, Warren Lohman for the record. Mr. Secretary, we would look to the Grants Management Office as the focal point to bring as much of an enterprise approach to policies and procedures on grant management as possible. As the director accurately said, all agencies are a little different, and as the treasurer said, all grants are managed a little differently, but that would be the expertise in the state who could work in that way.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Mr. Wells, do you want to make comment on this? It'll be red, it won't be green.
Good morning, Jim Wells, Deputy Chief of Staff to Governor Lombardo. We are working with the Grants Office to update the policies and procedures for grants management that haven't been updated for probably close to a decade now. We expect those to be done sometime in the current fiscal year.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Governor, this is Andy. Just a quick comment. I appreciate the exchange on that. The question I did have was fleshed out well in the Secretary of State's line of questioning. So thank you for that. Very informative, and I appreciate the effort on this.
All right. Hearing no further questions, we will close 6B and move on to 6C. And Warren, are we still hearing this item?
Yes, Governor, we are. And after our presentation, the director is in Vegas and would just like to add a few comments.
Okay. 6C.
Thank you, Governor. Craig Stevenson for the record. This is the first annual follow-up to our Department of Administration State Public Works Division audit, DIA report number 2201. This audit stemmed from questions regarding rental rate equity of state-owned buildings, specifically the Grant Sawyer building. There is one recommendation outstanding: to enhance the transparency and accuracy of rental rate calculations for state-owned buildings. The Director of the Department of Administration has a plan moving forward for enhancing the equity and transparency of rental rate calculations for state-owned buildings. The Director reports that the new rent methodology will be rolled out to all state-owned buildings, beginning with the new state campus buildings in Las Vegas. Once we have reviewed the new methodology, the recommendation will be considered fully implemented. Department of Administration Director Jack Robb is available in Las Vegas to answer any questions the committee may have.
Do we have any questions? Mr. Conine.
Thanks, sir. More of a comment, Treasurer Conine, for the record. I just want to thank Buildings and Grounds for all the work on this, an audit that was kicked off when we got our new invoice and realized that we were being charged for square footage that was in an atrium 4 stories over an open space of ground. So I want to thank all the work for a program that obviously hadn't been looked at for quite some time, both from an audit perspective and from a Buildings and Grounds perspective. Obviously, as we move into the new office campus, some of the kind of legacy issues here should get cleaned up in the transition, but I'm hopeful that we can include that new office campus in follow-ups, both on the space planning side and on the charging side, just to make sure that we don't unintentionally put ourselves back in a jackpot, which I know Director Robb won't do.
Mr. Robb, you want to make comment?
Jack Robb for the record. Appreciate the opportunity today. We are committed to standardizing. We have come up with a policy, and we're going to work with stakeholders to make sure that it is very transparent and equitably spread across all agencies in the new campus and other buildings we're acquiring. And the legacy buildings we will still maintain. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, I have a question. So reference Zach Conine's question. Procedurally, not all functions of the state are going to go to the campus, and obviously we have functions here to the north. So is this formula going to be provided so we can ensure that the calculations are correct for the existing buildings?
Jack Robb for the record. All formulas will be consistent statewide. It is going to be based on national standards, and we're going to look at distribution amongst floors on buildings that are multiple story and determine common area on multiple story buildings that individual agencies occupy the whole floor. It will look a little different than for the common areas, restrooms and stairwells and stuff. But it will be applied consistently across the state for all state-owned buildings through Buildings and Grounds.
Okay.
Treasurer Conine, to follow up on that, Governor. Consistently, but using local market rates, right? Because obviously an office building in Ely is going to be a different cost per square foot than an office building in Vegas, or no? Seeing a
Jack Robb for the record. The way we were approved for rates, they were a standard rate across the state, whether you're in Elko, Ely, Reno, or Vegas. And we were hoping to work with stakeholders going forward and work through the Governor's Office of Finance to come up with a methodology that we can not only cover the cost to have the individual agencies in these buildings, but to get to a point that we have routine and preventative maintenance and stay away from deferred maintenance, which is currently plaguing the building I'm sitting in down here in Grant Sawyer.
Governor Lombardo, I don't think that answered your question, though. He said standard rate across the state, so that's not what we're trying to achieve. In the negative?
Yeah, I mean, Treasurer Conine, for the record, the point I was making was perhaps the rental rates would be different in different places, but it seems like the agreement was, or the decision was to make the rental rates consistent statewide using the same methodology so that you know, a square foot in West Wendover would be the same cost as a square foot in Las Vegas, which I guess would mean West Wendover tenants would be subsidizing Las Vegas a little bit. But Mr. Dutra.
Matthew Tuma, Deputy Director of Administration, as well as Administrator Kent Lefevre of State Public Works Division. So just to add on to the follow-up questions, we charge a flat rate for all state-owned office space. Everybody pays the exact same rate, whether they're in northern Nevada or southern Nevada or in a rural county. Everybody pays the same rate for office space. There's a different rate for storage space, as well as a couple of other uses based on dependency. But we're moving forward with breaking out square footage based off of building usage and in the individual cases to make sure that we're not overcharging and charging equitably amongst agencies. As well as just a follow-up on a previous question on evaluating legacy systems, part of Public Works' follow-up is remeasuring all of our existing buildings to ensure that we're using updated, accurate square footage.
So procedurally, I don't know who's best situated to answer this question. So moving forward with the new formula, is that a formula approved by the audit division or by this board or committee prior to implementation?
So Matthew Tuma, Deputy Director for the record. Statutorily, Public Works determines what that rate is and charges that out to customers.
Not the rate, specific to the formula.
So that would be at the determination of the Public Works Division. Clearly, we like to do that through a transparent process and want to make sure that we're reporting the methodology and how we're doing that through this board, as well as ensure that the legislative branch has visibility to how that's being utilized.
So Mr. Lung, will the audit continue then? We wouldn't consider this closed at this point?
Yes, Governor, that's where we sort of move to after discussions with the department, and we will take a look at the methodology, if you will, and assess if that meets the requirements, the recommendations from the audit, even though the major buildings in question have changed. We will look at the methodology in our follow-up and assess that, yes, that meets the intent of the audit, and hopefully get to a consensus that
Okay.
it does.
Well, I commend the treasurer bringing this issue forward. Always managing the books. Any further questions? Thank you, Jack. Thank you for participating, everybody. We'll close agenda item number 6C and move on to D.
Beatrice Ortiz, Audit Manager for the record. This is the first annual follow-up to our Department of Public Safety Investigation Division Audit, DIA Report Number 2202. The audit focused on improving oversight of federal grants, performance measures, and workforce diversity to help ensure more effective and efficient operations. Representing DPS and NDI is Deputy Director Sherry Brueggemann and Chief Ryan Miller. One recommendation remains outstanding, and one recommendation is no longer applicable. Since the status report, the one outstanding recommendation to better align performance measures with NDI's priorities has been fully met. NDI reported the performance measures were approved through the budget process. NDI has not taken proactive action to promote workforce diversity. NDI reports they have no authority to implement recommendations related to recruiting and do not have the information necessary to respond to questions and/or concerns related to the department's recruiting effort because recruitment is the responsibility of DPS. We thank DPS and NDI for their assistance in preparing our report. Agency leadership is available to answer any questions the committee may have.
Do we have any questions from any board member? So go ahead, Anthony. Andy?
Nope, I'm just going to say I'm good here. Thanks.
So for the record, Governor Lombardo, so the consensus of the report is we don't have any authority, so that falls under public safety and we're done with this.
That's correct, Governor. Warren Loman for the record.
Did the audit move into public safety then to ensure that the diversity question was answered in their existing policies?
Not yet, Governor. Warren Loman for the record. One of the approved audits on our audit plan is the director's office, and we just have not had the time yet to get in there to look at a host of issues that we wanted to look at.
Okay.
There.
Is that how you see it?
Sherry Brigham, DPS Deputy Director. No, we've answered many questions with regard to recruiting and a report on what we were doing. Up until this year, we didn't have the rates to be able to pay our officers what we needed, so we were extremely short. And thanks to all the laws that passed, we are looking very strong now. We're seeing double and triple the amount of applications coming in. The quality of the applicants is still not exactly what we'd hope, but about 50% of them are passing the polygraph right now, and that's a good thing. It was like less than 10% before of a very small number of applications. So we're thrilled with all of that. In addition, we have been approved for some ARPA funds. My understanding is $500,000 for a marketing campaign, and that will be heard in the August IFC. Up until this point, we have had no marketing money whatsoever.
So, but the question overall, I appreciate every comment, the comments you made there, but the question overall of the audit is diversity, right? So it's not numbers, but diversity.
Warren Loman for the record. Yes, Governor, that's correct. And as the Deputy Director noted, they now have some tools that they did not have before, so we would anticipate going in after some time when we have some data to be able to make a more informed assessment of how that's working out of the Director's office.
All right.
If I may, Governor?
Sure.
The question was originally the diversity in the Division of Investigations,
Right.
which is a small division, as you know. And the people in that division were on the very close side of retirement, and there was not a lot of diversity in that division because of the amount of years in. That division takes its transfers from the body of the rest of the department, and again, it's those people who are interested in applying. If the diversity question is looked at for the entire department, the numbers are looking pretty good. Definitely can look better, but everything is down at this point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, Governor. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So is there a priority for diversity within the director's office?
There's always a priority for diversity in the director's office, but we are so short-staffed, there's anybody who can meet our standards, because we refuse to drop those. We actually do advertise on social media directed to diverse populations. We've considered the 30-30, I think, program where women are especially targeted, of all races, obviously. So definitely diversity is number one in our mind at all times, and it seems that that is a response we are getting. It's hopefully we make it all the way through the process so we can say that those targets worked.
So on the 500,000 you come from ARPA, do you have targeted plans to hit targeted populations for recruitment?
We definitely do, but the hope for a marketing plan is to get a marketing firm to help us target those people, because that's where we're at. We're personnel, and that's it. That's all we have. So we're really looking at some help with actually finding the targets to target that messaging to.
Thank you.
Governor, if I may, Treasurer Conan, for the record, some follow-ups on that, on the Secretary's line of questioning. The $500,000 from ARPA was approved legislatively through a work program. When did that, I missed it, when did it happen?
It is supposed to happen at IFC in August. That was my last understanding, that And I do know that they were prioritizing work programs based on the number that were going before August IFC. I don't know if they've postponed it to the next one. And I was still hoping for August.
Understood. And then from then, assuming that was approved, you would move into an RFP process, find a thing. So when do you think that this marketing?
We may not have to go through RFP because we already have a contracted marketing company, and there are a number within the state, so I don't anticipate having to do that. We may be looking at suggestions or programs from the various marketing companies within the state to give us their ideas and then choose one. But we're really looking for someone who has the ideas. How can we do this? Because we're competing with our own local state police and in all of these areas, in every single county. So while we're competing with all of them, we need to send a message that clearly puts us above and beyond everyone else. And that's what we need help with.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'd just like to state a comment. There are firms who have come up in the last couple of years that are really focused on target populations, and if there's an opportunity to engage those folks, I think it's an opportunity. They may not be on the list now because they're new, but they're doing great work, and if there's an opportunity for you to consider them, then the usual suspects are typically on that list.
Yes, thank you.
All right, we will close this item 6D and move on to item number 7, approval of the annual audit plan pursuant to NRS 353A.038, and this is an action item.
Thank you, Governor Warren Loman. For the record, if you look at tab C, we are requesting approval from the committee for one several audits, one topic to put on our list, looking at collective bargaining implementation. It will take us a bit to get to it because we want to have some information available to audit. And as we're sort of in the initial stages of that, we'd like to be able to officially monitor what is happening and make a determination of when sufficient data is available to go in and look at not only how are the collective bargaining arrangements being implemented, but at some point in the future, what are the outcomes of all of that? So I would ask the governor and the committee to approve this audit to the plan.
So I have a question. So approval of the audit, but yet we're not going to act.
Warren Logan, for the record, not quite, Governor. Approval for the audit so that we can do initial audit work, monitoring of the bargaining, the agreements, gathering some information along the way so that when we feel we have sufficient information to make a meaningful audit, we can begin and go. This was a requested audit. We always try to prioritize requests, and we're not going to push this out very long, but it will take 6 months or so until we think we have enough data to go in and do something meaningful.
Okay. Yeah, I would request that this rises to the top as a priority because we've identified some gaps associated with the collective bargaining agreements implementation. It has a definitive effect on several employees. So we need to figure that out both for the budgetary issues and for personnel and their quality of life, right? I guess if there's no other questions, are there any questions, any board members before I entertain a motion?
No, I do have questions, Governor. Cisco, for the record.
Go ahead.
Mine is related to the Charter School Authority. I know their presentation date is scheduled for February of '24. I know one of the governor's main priority is school access or school choice. And I think if you look at a February 24 deadline, looking at an academic year, that just pushes it another year. And if we could get them here for October 23rd, I think that'll help us advance that initiative. But also too, I have great concerns about the Charter Authority and its opportunity of providing access equally throughout the community, and I'd like to hear from them sooner.
We will work and do the very best we can, Warren Lohman for the record, to move that forward. We're in the midst of the executive order on public and charter schools, and this is sort of part of it. We will do our best to get this on the October.
Okay, because I just know sometimes calendar years, fiscal years, academic years, people use that as an excuse to delay action or interest, and I don't want to see that delayed.
So Warren, would it assist you if we modify the executive order to be inclusive?
We're fine, Governor. We're working sort of parallel on both audits, and I think we can accomplish getting the access piece on the charter schools out by October, and then we'll finish up the executive order and have that out by December 29th, and then we wanted to come back at our next EBAC meeting in February and present that audit to the committee as an effort in transparency.
So, well, excuse me, just a matter of clarification. So is that in conjunction with the charter school issue or no?
We will not, currently the audit plan did not anticipate looking at access in detail in the executive order audit. We were going to follow that with this audit, as you pointed out the other day, that's been on the board for many, many years. And the executive order is really focused on the question of accountability and various aspects of accountability.
Okay. So, I wouldn't, any other questions, and then I'll say what I was going to say. Any other questions, Mr. Matthews?
No.
All right, so I will entertain a motion for approval. I would recommend the motion be inclusive of the charter school issue.
Motion to approve as the governor stated.
Is that sufficient?
Second.
Was his motion sufficient? Okay. All right, we have a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right, that's unanimous. The motion passes. Thank you for, okay. Do we have any comment from any committee members from item number 8?
No, Governor.
Nothing from the
Matthews?
south.
All right,
Nope.
we'll close item number 8, move on to second opportunity for public comment. Item number 9. Do we have any public comment to the south?
No, Governor.
Do we have any here to the north? Yes, sir.
Excuse me, Governor. Just for your benefit and the benefit of the new members, I'd like to introduce the Division of Internal Audit staff. They're in the first couple of rows over here. These are the folks who are doing the work that is assigned to us in your requests, and want to just give them the opportunity to show their faces, and thank you for all that you're doing for us.
Can you stand up and introduce yourself and limit your speeches to 5 minutes? No, but I would recommend you. Thank you, Patty. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry, what was the name? Jazz? Oh, thank you. Hey. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Melissa. Oh, absolutely. Any public comment on the phone? All right, we will close agenda item number 9 and move on to adjournment for action.
Motion to adjourn, Governor Cisco.
Seconded, Treasurer.
We are adjourned. Oh, well, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, everyone, for your time.